Welcome to City of Keene in Focus. Thanks so much for listening. Good morning and welcome to our next episode of City of Keene in Focus. My name is Asa Kramer and I am joined by our city manager, Elizabeth Furland.
Yes.
That's a new update.
That is a new update. So thanks for having me, Asa, this morning. And I am very excited about my new last name. On January 14th, I went to Vegas and married my sweetheart.
Yay,
Yeah.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so awesome.
Yeah, he's a great guy. We've been dating for 6 years. And all of our kids are older, so it was really nice just to have them all together and they all get along. And it's just amazing. So we had a great trip. We were gone for about a week. We did some other stuff while we were there. Went to a show, went to the Grand Canyon, did all sorts of fun stuff. And it was just, everything went great. It was amazing.
And what a nice little way to get away from work a little bit and just celebrate your love and family. And...
I even had wedding crashers.
Did you really?
I did. So one day we were coming back to our room and we were getting into the elevator and two of my longtime friends who are also town managers, I've known them for 26 years because we've been doing this a long time, and I look around, they come around the corner and I was like, oh my God, what are you two doing here?
In Nevada.
Yeah, in Nevada. So they had talked to my daughter and my son, didn't tell me, and booked a hotel room where we were and surprised us. So it was really great.
That's so fun.
They even had little wedding crasher sashes that they wore the day of the wedding. It was hilarious.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was great. But you know what? Now it's a real pain to change your name.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of work. Yeah. So, I mean, you start with getting your marriage license, and then you've got to change your license. Then you got to go to the Social Security Bureau. And then just think about all of the documents that I sign every single day. And so we've been transitioning those over. So some days I'm still signing Elizabeth Dragon. Some days it's Elizabeth Furland. And the days that I'm signing Elizabeth Furland, it really feels like I'm forging someone's name. I'm just not used to it yet.
Sure.
Yeah.
It takes me 3 months to write the correct date after the new year, so I kept my name after I got married. I can't even imagine how long it would take me to remember to write my new name if I had changed it. So
yeah. But it was great. But I'm happy to be back, and we're working through the process to get all of the documents changed, and I'm getting better at signing that name.
Well, congratulations. We're all really excited
you.
for you. So, last night was City Council, and I think there was a lot of discussion. Can you fill us in on what some of the big topics were?
Sure. Yeah, last night was a rather long meeting. We did have some big topics on the agenda. We had Karen Leo Hill, who's our new executive counselor. She came to see us last night and talked a little bit about the work that she does and how she's really interested in helping the city however she can. And so that was great to start with her. She spent a little time talking to the council and then talked about her newsletter. So anyone who wants to follow what she's doing can sign up for that. And so that's how we really began the meeting last night. And then we moved right into a public hearing, and the public hearing actually didn't get any comment. There was no comment from the public. This public hearing was about the interior side and rear setbacks in the downtown edge zone. So by the time an ordinance change like this gets to public hearing, it's gone through several iterations and reviews by committee. So this had gone to our joint committee, which is made up of planning board members and PLD members. And then I actually think they did an A version. They made a slight adjustment, and then it goes to public hearing, and then it'll go to PLD before it comes back to the council. So right now we are still accepting comments from the public. I think it's Tuesday until 1. And those comments can be submitted to the city clerk's office if you are still interested in letting us know how you feel about this change. And then we had a couple of communications. One was about the downtown infrastructure project. There's a gentleman who's been weighing in on the project. He lives in California, but I guess he grew up here, so he's been following with great interest. And he wrote us a letter saying we should not be applying for the RAISE grant. And the RAISE grant, as you know, is a multi-million-dollar grant opportunity to help us fund the downtown project. We've applied for it once. We were not funded. We met with USDOT to get some feedback as to how to make the application stronger, and we had already submitted. The deadline was last week, and so we submitted, I think it was Thursday night. And so, fingers crossed that we are successful with this grant. I do understand, though, he's opposing us getting these grant dollars and reaching out to USDOT directly, as well as to Senator Shaheen's office, which is unfortunate if it influences any of their decisions, because it only hurts the property owners, the taxpayers here in the city of Keene if we are unsuccessful at getting grant dollars to help us fund this project.
You were saying that last week the RAISE grant application was submitted. What's the turnaround from them on hearing back from that?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm not sure I know. It'll be a few months for sure. But we did get some exciting news last week, and I had shared that news with the city council. I mentioned it again last night. We received $1.7 million for the structure on Gilbo as part of the downtown project.
Oh, great.
Yeah, really, really excited about that. So that is the structure that will hold the solar panels. So the solar panels are being built to provide the energy that we need for the downtown. So for our lights, for any of the outlets. And so it's pretty exciting. It's a $2.1 million project, and we got 80% funded through a grant. So pretty cool. That will help
amazing.
us. Yeah. So we had also previously been awarded a drinking water state revolving loan principal forgiveness of approximately $2 million for this project, and a clean state revolving loan principal forgiveness for water revolving loan principal forgiveness of $137. So far, the Public Works Department, the team has been doing a great job at applying for all of these different funding opportunities. And I really got to give a shout out to our Public Works Director, Don Lucier, and our new city engineer. I'm still going to call him new. He's been here for a few months. Brian Ruoff. They have been, working diligently to get as many applications into all of these different funding sources to reduce the impact on the property taxpayers of the city of Keene. So, fingers crossed on the RAISE grant. So probably be a few months before we hear anything.
Yeah.
So last night we had several reports from council committees. We did a few different no parking actions last night. We had a request for no parking at the entrance of 312 Marlborough Street. And actually that is going to be dealt with an upcoming project this spring, summer to finish the Marlborough Street corridor project. And so there was no additional action that was required. We had an individual couple that was concerned related to truck traffic on Water Street and Woodland Streets. And so we are installing a no tractor trailer sign at the entrance of that road. And I think one of the interesting things that was approved last night is this proposal by the Public Works Director to overlay asphalt sidewalks. The council, I don't know, maybe 30 years ago had decided that whenever we did a sidewalk that it would be concrete. And it makes sense. It'll cost more, but it will last a lot longer. And they did quite an analysis back then, and we've actually looked at it, and it still makes sense. The problem is we can't fund enough concrete sidewalks to keep up with the work that needs to be done. And we've got a lot of neighborhoods that are really concerned about their sidewalks. And so the Public Works Director came in with a plan to overlay sidewalks with asphalt. So we're still going to build concrete sidewalks whenever we do a project, but we do have several sidewalks in our neighborhoods that are currently asphalt. And in the past, we've gone out there and patched it. And to be honest, it just hasn't held. And it really hasn't been all that helpful. And so I think this is going to make a big difference for those neighborhoods, and it'll be more immediate. And so the plan is to use funds that are in our operating budget. We have funds every year set aside for maintenance of sidewalks. And so instead of going out there and just filling these potholes or uneven surfaces, they're actually going to overlay these asphalt sidewalks. And I think the neighborhoods will be happy with that. I'm hoping. It's a great idea.
Yeah, it sounds like a great solution.
Yeah. And then we had several resignations with boards and commissions. They took those all together. And so it's really started this conversation at the City Council about whether or not to do consent agendas. And Councilor Remy has been an advocate for consent agendas, and so I think we're going to be talking about that more. Right now, it's sort of an informal process. If we have some things that are easily grouped together, we'll group them together so that the council can do one motion instead of multiple motions, and that is a time saver. But there is a balance to that, because when we have the actions that are coming from the committees, it's been very helpful to have the committee council chairs do just a brief overview before the council votes whether or not to accept the committee's recommendation. And so I do think they're going to talk more about that and decide what's the right balance and if we should use a consent agenda, and if so, how we would use that in the future. And then last night we had some additional ordinances that went for first reading and some that had second reading. One of the ones that had a second reading and ultimate adoption was related to designating loading zones and bus zones. This has been more controversial than I expected. And really it's this trying to find the right balance between having a pull-off spot for a bus that's picking up people versus these 15-minute loading zones where people are coming in and out. And this really began with Central Square Terrace and Roxbury Street. So when Roxbury Street was redone a few years ago, we changed where the curb cut is located, because in the past they had this mid-block crossing that was dangerous. So it's been moved so that there's a pedestrian light, and it's a much safer way to cross. But it did create some concerns from residents of Central Square Terrace, because having that whole stretch loading zone has created some conflicts with the bus that's picking them up. And many of the people who live at Central Square Terrace have mobility issues. And so we were looking at how can we make this better? How can we make sure there's space for the bus to be able to pull in and pick them up? And so the Public Works Director came up with a compromise and basically taking that stretch and making a portion of it a bus stop, and then leaving the rest as the 15-minute loading zone. So it went through last night. There'll be a change. There'll still be 2 parking spaces approximately that will be used for that 15-minute drop-off, and then there will be a bus zone. I don't think that was as controversial as the Gilbo Ave. We started with just wanting to fix Roxbury Street for Central Square residents, but the city attorney recommended if we were going to look at bus stops, we needed to look at them all. And so we have 3 in the city. There's one in front of the library on West Street, and then there's one in front of what was the transportation center on Gilbo. And so we talked a lot about the Gilbo one. And in the end, what they decided to do was, again, a compromise, create a section that is for bus stops, but the rest of it will remain 15-minute loading zones. And so I think that was a good compromise, and now we'll need to do some changes in signage, and then there'll be some enforcement, and now we have bus stops, official bus stops that will be in the ordinance that hadn't been there before.
Great. It sounds like a great compromise.
And I think last night the biggest item on the agenda was related to the fire department applying for the SAFER grant. So I've talked about this in the past, but we've had some real concerns at the fire department in terms of the number of calls that are overlapping, just the number of calls that are happening in one shift, the demand on the firefighters who are responding. And we've taken a lot of time to analyze those calls and look at the trends and determine what was driving this increase in calls. And it really comes down to the closure of Deluzio Ambulance. And once they closed, they were backing us up, and we do have an arrangement with Cheshire EMS to back us up. But the other thing that Deluzio was doing is they were servicing all of the skilled nursing facilities in the community. And so that took a lot of pressure off of the fire department. And now what we're seeing is a lot of calls at these nursing facilities. It is the primary driver of the increase in calls. We've increased gradually over the years, but this has been a dramatic increase. Last night, the council approved the city applying for a SAFER grant, which is a federal grant to fund an additional 4 firefighters per shift. So that's a total of 16 firefighters.
The current number of firefighters per shift is 10 or 11?
So we have 11 authorized firefighters per shift. We added 1 per shift a couple of years ago. But what we do is we keep a minimum of 10. Mm-hmm. And the reason for that is if you have a minimum of 10 and someone calls in, they're sick or they have vacation, we have that 11th position to cover for that person that's calling in or has scheduled time off. And so, we've always kept 10, but that's been really, really hard because with the increase in calls, the burnout that's happening with these firefighters, and just it's difficult to get people back in when we're calling them back in. And so, this will address that. Last night, the council authorized the submission of this grant. And we will find out approximately in September, we're thinking. It really depends on when the federal government issues the notice of funding, but it should be around September. And if we're successful, we'll come back to the council. But this grant would allow us to hire 4 firefighters per shift, 16 firefighters total, and it would pay for those firefighters for 3 years. Wow. And we believe it's going to be at 100% for 3 years. Wow. And so, yeah, it's huge.
That's huge. That's game-changing.
It is game-changing. And it would give us 3 additional years to look at our revenues, our billings, determine how we can lessen the impact on the budget and the tax rate in that 4th year, because in the 4th year, it'll become the 100% responsibility of the city. Mm-hmm. So last night was a huge win for us, yes. And it was really great because the council was so supportive. All of the comments from counselors were about concerns related to our firefighters and concerns related to our ability to respond to 911 calls. And, they just were so supportive. And in the end, it was a unanimous vote to go forth. And so now the work begins. We hired a grant writer, and got to give a lot of credit to our fire chief, Jason Martin, and our deputy fire chief, Greg Seymour, and the admin, I don't know what her official title is, but she's like the clerk of the works over there, Kelly DeRoges. They have put together a ton of data to explain what's happening and to explain why they need these additional firefighters.
I think her official title is Miracle Worker.
That's great. I'm going to use that from now on. She does a ton of work for them, and she really was instrumental in pulling together all of this data and helping us really analyze it and really determine what was causing the increase in calls. And so we're hoping we'll be successful. Like I said, we did hire a grant writer to help us. This grant writer has been successful at getting the SAFER grant for other communities, and so I feel confident we'll put together a strong application.
Fingers crossed on this one, too.
I know. It's great because we have a team of dedicated employees in the departments who understand the impact to our taxpayers and do all that they can to try to mitigate that. That requires some aggressive work going after grants, and they do it, and they're quite successful. So we're very fortunate to have them. I think that's it. That was the meeting last night.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, super. Were you able to go to the Ice and Snow Festival? I was sick.
I was.
How was it?
It was great. Actually, my new husband and I took my grandson.
Oh, fun.
And my mom. So we came downtown for the festival, and it was wonderful. There were people everywhere.
Good.
It was well attended. It was very cold, so I was worried that it might be too cold and people wouldn't come out, but they came out, and the sculptures were just amazing, as always. And last year, during the Ice and Snow Festival, we did have some concerns with crowds gathering around the sculptures and creating some issues with the traffic. And our protocol team here at the city took that feedback and did a great job. That was not an issue this time. Everything was spread out. We had a very safe and popular and well-attended event.
Great. And if you haven't been downtown, the ice sculptures are still up. They're so cool. And I would definitely take a stroll downtown and just take a look at them. They're really, really cool. And speaking of downtown, I just want to highlight a couple of job opportunities. If you go to keenenh.gov/jobs, I know one in particular that we are hiring for is the Downtown Project Ombudsman.
Yes.
Ombudsman. And so that's a great opportunity for someone who wants to be really involved with the community.
And the reason we are advertising for that position now is we're hoping to get someone in the role as soon as possible to really begin the outreach and communication with the downtown businesses, because that is going to be this person's job for the next 3+ years. Mm-hmm. Communicating with businesses, residents, being the go-between between the city and the contractor, following up on concerns, making sure that people know what's going on. And so we're hoping we get some good applicants for this and we get them started relatively soon.
And then following up on job opportunities, I know Parks and Rec is hiring for some seasonal positions, which is great for if you have a teenager in the house that might be interested in being a camp counselor or a lifeguard. I think they're hiring for. So there's a wide scope of jobs available at the city. It's a great place to work. So I encourage you to go check out keenenh.gov/jobs. Is there anything else that you'd like to talk about today?
I would like to just mention the changes in the overnight parking that's now being allowed. I mentioned last night at the city council meeting, it seems like people are getting used to it. It was a change because, before when November came around, there was a restriction. There was no overnight parking until the spring, basically. And with this ordinance change, now people can park there most of the time, although we seem to be getting a lot of snowstorms lately.
We really do.
I know. Not great for the budget. But when we get a snowstorm like that, the Public Works Director will put out a message about a snow ban, and that will let people know that the upcoming night, usually it's about a day in advance, they'll let people know that they will need to move their cars and there will be a winter emergency snow ban in place. And so that is from 1 a.m. until I think it's 6 a.m. Now they only need to move their cars when that happens. The first snowstorm, people were a little bit confused about it and where they could park and where they had to move their cars. But now that we've had so many snowstorms recently, I think people are getting the hang of it, and it's really, I think, a success for the most part. We still have some things we have to work out. We are hoping to get some signage, some permanent signage up in our municipal lots on Gilbo. That way you don't have to go online to figure out which parking lot is available to you for overnight parking. We'll be able to post it right there, and when you're pulling in, you can say, okay, it's this lot, and tomorrow night it's this lot. I think that will really help. But for the most part, I would say it's been a success.
That's great.
Yeah.
I just have to give kudos to the staff and also the community. When a change like this happens, there's a little bit of adjustment that needs to happen. And I think everyone did a really good job to make the changes work for the community. Because it's not going to be one size fits all. You got to figure out what works for specifically Keene. And I think everyone did a really good job sort of pivoting and making that happen.
And I've gotten some feedback from people who live downtown, and they are just thrilled about this.
Oh, good.
Yeah, the people that I've talked to who live downtown are so thankful, because before it was costing them to find a location to move their car for several months, and it was difficult. So think about, if you're coming home late, maybe you have a late shift, and you're coming home and you got to park quite a ways away and then walk, and the weather, it's in the winter. The people that I've talked to have been very appreciative in the downtown.
Good. If there's nothing else, we'll wrap up for today. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for joining me, Elizabeth Ferland.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations. And we will see you next time. Thanks for listening to City of Keene in Focus. We'll see you next time.